two words, our Father. They are foundational to what makes this prayer so grounded, so inviting, so
powerful.
Welcome and thank you for joining us for this podcast. Whether you've been in for the prior ones or this is numero uno, you can go back and see the other ones on the website. We are really close, T-minus probably about a week for dropping the book. And we're excited about it. Living the Lord's Prayer. And our mission and the reason we're doing these podcasts is because we want to share this. Chuck shared in the last podcast his story of how this all started way back as a Lent commitment with his friends for 40 days in a small group. And it's lasted 8 years and counting. Sounds like James Bond. And counting. Today, we're on to the word Father, as in our Father. And you might be thinking, gosh, it's your third podcast in the series, and you're still on the second word of the prayer. And yeah, we readily admit it. And the book reads that way a little bit too. But those first two words, our Father, and our Catholic friends even call the prayer the Our Father, they are foundational to what makes this prayer so grounded, so inviting, so
powerful.
Proclamationatory. That's not the word, but we'll make it up here.
We'll go with powerful.
We'll go with powerful. And it really lays the foundation for the rest, especially if you are like I was growing up, meaning not really surrounded by religious people or religious culture, spiritually, wherever you're at. Jesus, when he gave the Lord's Prayer, he gave it to a large mixed crowd. They were not his followers. They were just checking out who he was. But he was talking to them, and he started it with, as Chuck said, our Father. Not here's how you pray to my Father, but our Father. And then Father can trigger some feelings and some memories, because some of us are like Chuck, who just has a beautiful relationship with his dad. And others of us, like me, either didn't have a warm and beautiful relationship with our dad or didn't have much of one at all. He left when I was in the fifth grade. So Chuck, why don't you talk about Father, as in our Heavenly Father and our earthly fathers?
Yeah, on our second night, so our first night we do the who were you at 16? And then the question, how would God describe your relationship with him? Second night at dinner, we do a toast to our dads. And I had no idea when we first started doing that, how powerful that would be. And even if I have 6 to 8 guys in the room, there's at least one, if not 2, that usually opt out. And, you can toast your mom or, your coach or somebody that maybe filled that role in your life. But I've been really surprised at the father wounds that are out there. I get to toast Charlie Scott, who my dad's 87 and still going and still amazing. And really, I got about as close of an example as you can get to the Heavenly Father and an earthly father. I'm so blessed. And I've learned that more and more the more I've been around guys and heard the pain and the stories. But even in that, I had my own father wounds, especially in the performance, and because he was so proud of my accomplishments, and he would introduce me as, that's my son Chuck, he plays for the Rams. And he didn't mean anything by that other than he was just a proud dad. But I kept hearing, good gosh, I got to keep, I need to do well. My dad's proud of that. So it was hard when I didn't have that platform, that stage. I went through a time of really not knowing who I was. But for so many of these guys, and like you, Doug, who dad wasn't there, wasn't so much. When we toast our dads, when we go out to the fire pit that night, and we're talking about our discussion that night is life that is truly life, and we'll get more into that later. But I talked to him in Young Life. So many of the kids that are drawn to us, to me, like as a Young Life leader, are kids whose dads aren't necessarily, they're not there for them, or they're looking for attention. And here I am, this older male, giving them attention, going to their games, supporting them. And so many times when we share the love of the Heavenly Father, you can just see in a young man's eyes almost this disconnect. The father wounds are almost a stiff arm to understanding the love of a Heavenly Father. And I saw that more and more in these men. And as we sat around the fire that night, I said, if that's you, I want to encourage you that no matter how hard that would be, your Heavenly Father is that perfect Father who does love you and care for you regardless, not because of performance or whatever it is you're trying to do to get them to love you. And a lot of these guys are really successful. And it's interesting. I said, I wonder what drove them to be so successful, is they just wanted their dad just one time to say they were proud. I'm proud of you. And so they just worked and worked and worked and achieved and achieved. And so father wounds are a big part of what we do. Should I give the example of Neil?
Sure. Yeah.
An example at the fire pit one night, where at the table when we were toasting our dads, I had we'll call him a Cajun from Louisiana, come to one of our properties to duck hunt with us, duck and deer hunt.
Cajun from Louisiana, isn't that sort of
that's true. Same
redundant?
Thing. Same thing. My bad.
Okay. Yeah.
But he walked up to me when they got there, and we had a mutual friend who had invited him, and he knew this was Young Life owned this really nice place, and it was given to us by a very generous person. So he knew that it was kind of going to be a Young Life focus, and he walked up to me right when he got there, and he says, "No offense, but I don't do kumbaya." And I guess what he was saying to me was, I'm here to hunt. I'm not here for the kumbaya. And so anyway, that night at dinner, when we did the 16 question, he was all in. He had 3 older brothers. He had this terrible little old rusted out car, and he was laughing. But when we got out to the fire and we did the how would God describe, he said, when we got to him, he goes, pass. And he was kind of like, oh, I see what you're trying to do. You're trying to get me to talk about deeper things here. So he passed, and he went out the next day and had an amazing hunt. We had an amazing day. And that night at dinner, when we're toasting our dads, he was last. And I really thought he would pass. I thought he'd just go, I ain't doing this. But he grabbed his wine glass by the stem, and he was squeezing it so hard. And he was a big guy that I thought he was going to break the glass. And he said, my dad was mean. And he went into just some stuff that he had done to his brothers and his mom. And I can't toast my dad. And he ended up toasting his coach, I think. But I mean, it was just like, we were all just like, wow. I mean, you could just feel the rage that was in him. We go out to the fire pit, and I do that explanation of why we toast our dads and how so many kids in Young Life stiff arm the love of the Heavenly Father because of the wounds of their earthly father. And this big old guy just starts like almost convulsing, just weeping. And we were just like, wow. We guys were getting up, and we went, and we were, just gathering around him and praying for him. And he just said, that's my story. I've been so mad at God my whole life for, giving me such a terrible dad. And I've just stiffed arm. I've placed all that rage, that hate on my Heavenly Father. And I want so bad to know this is true. And we were able to begin. I mean, it's going to be a process, still is a journey and a process, but we were able to begin to set him free, to understand that his Heavenly Father does love him and does run to him, and to start working through the earthly father pain. So it was a powerful time. And when he was leaving, he came up to me the next day, and he kind of said, Chuck, I get to hunt a lot of places, and this was really cool. This hunt was really good, but that wasn't the best part. And he got a little misty-eyed, and I kind of helped him out. I said, was it the kumbaya? And he goes, Yeah. Yeah. And then the ultimate compliment as he was walking away is he said, can I bring my son next year? Because I want him to experience this.
Mm.
And I was just like, wow, how cool is that? But the father wounds are real. And Doug, you know that firsthand.
Well, I do. And I think in Chuck's story, you can tell that when we do these trips that we do all over the country and for Chuck all over the world, there's certainly they're interactive. We do more posing questions and engaging discussion than we do talking at people. And so translating that into a book form is what we've attempted to do. So you'll find plenty of reflection questions, action steps. We have different guys who've shared their story as if we were going around the circle. And so that's cool. But we're trying as best we can to bring the interactive experience that happens when guys are away and maybe talking around a fire pit or a deck or a big room or, by a lake or whatever it is, to life in a book, even though it's flat pages and we're not really there to interact, which in some ways has been a challenge for us because just about every paragraph of the book, men and women, as you read the book, think we're trying to anticipate, okay, how is someone going to receive this if they've been walking with the Lord all this time and they know the Lord's Prayer really well? This is going to seem sort of sophomoric, but no, that's a unique take. That could be good. But then the person who's never been around faith, is it going to seem too elevated or beyond them, or is it going to connect? And old and young and different parts of the country, and we've gone a little nuts trying to anticipate every single person and trying to anticipate what they would think or feel like we're reading a room. And at a certain point, we had to say, we're going to do our best to capture it. But our real life trips are like a video and a book is like a snapshot. It's one book, one time. And I think we've come close. But dad experiences are different. And my two main understandings of it, one comes from with my own dad. I mentioned he left when I was in the 5th grade. And, it's interesting. I can tell you I loved my dad, but I didn't like him. And there wasn't much to like. We never had a falling out. He just sort of disappeared. And we had a few touches as adults. Every time we had a new kid, we'd introduce him. But my dad certainly never guided me, certainly never, I don't remember warmth. I do remember his temper. But I've never wanted to go tell the world he's a bad guy. I don't think you've ever felt in 40 years that I'm on a mission for that. But I became a lifelong learner at a very young age, and it wasn't a character trait, it was a survival skill. And so when I first heard about the Heavenly Father, I was all in. I was all ears to hear. And I certainly had my ideas of what I thought a father should be. And I remember the day that my mom told me he was leaving. And I cried from a place that I didn't even know that I had. It felt uncontrollable. Because in my head, I was thinking, hey, this is going to be great. Freedom. I'm not going to pull off his belt and whack me. I'm going to be the oldest. I can play mom. This is going to be cool. And, long term, it wasn't necessarily. But so my experience is different than Chuck's. Chuck, also, we didn't have time to talk about it, but Chuck's dad gave him, 7 talks through the years at key life events. Your first date, your first job, and his dad gave him, clear guidance and teaching. Man, I learned on the playground. I learned from overhearing conversations. I literally was open to learning from the bathroom, graffiti stalls and stuff. So wherever you're coming from with your dad or your stepdad or anyone who might make that a rough go, I promise you we've tried to treat that issue with sensitivity and care and not hold back that our Heavenly Father really is marvelous. And he really is who he says he is. And it's not just a religious deal where we need to live up to his standards. In fact, we can't live up to his standards. He knows we can't. And he knows everything about us, everything we've ever done wrong, said wrong, thought wrong. And he loves us anyway. He loves me. He knows everything about me. And he loves me anyway. And that's good news. So we're 3 podcasts in and we've gotten through 2 words, our Father. But that's how the book rolls. We're trying to go deeper into the Lord's Prayer and then how to go live it out. And I'll tell you, when I start a day with my Heavenly Father, our Father, I am more grounded, more solid, more able to lead those I lead and love those I love. And I hope that you have a similar experience on your journey, whatever your history has been. And we hope that you'll pass the word. And pretty soon we'll be giving you instructions on how to do that because the drop date's going to be announced soon. Okay, thank you. Blessings on you.